Right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today with our lunch and learn called Navigating the Return to School. It's so hard to believe that it's time to think about this, but we're here in August and it's quickly approaching. And so today we are joined by Michelle Zellner. She's been with us many times before and always does a fabulous job. So we're so excited to hear what she has to talk about today. But before I pass this over to her, as always, these sessions are recorded, so you can expect to receive a recording in your email within the next week or so. We also put them on our BeWell website as well. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to utilize the chat box or the Q&A feature, and we will get to as many as time allows for. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Michelle.
Well, thank you, Angela. Always great to be with this group. Just quick background on me. My name is Michelle Zellner. I have a business called Better Beings, and that has been my mission for 26 years to help people be better human beings, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Very fortunate to partner with EAPs like SupportLinc to get to have conversations like this with all of you. This is, kind of a niche topic, and even within this topic, it can be very niche because is your kid 6 or is your kid 17, right? It's very different. So I like to have as much conversation as possible, especially when there are things that are maybe very unique. If you have a challenge or a question about something particular, we should have plenty of time to address it. So please do put that in the chat or the Q&A so we can talk about some of those things. A lot of what I'm going to go through is kind of general, and I know that there are no general people. Not only, the age of your kids, but the situations they are or aren't in, the situations you are or aren't in. There's so many factors that are going to play a role in how you specifically navigate the return to school. It's hard to have a general conversation, honestly, but we're going to throw out some simple tips. Hopefully you find them helpful. And as I said, if there is something very unique, let's see if we can tackle it together. Happy that we are doing this while you still have a few weeks before school starts. Because I tell you, I've done this one and people are like, well, school's already started. I'm like, okay, well, we're a little behind. Because if you want to have a successful return to school, you got to start ahead of time. So this is the time to get the routine in place, start the bedtime routine, start the getting up routine. We can baby step our way into it. So you figure out, what does that commute to school look like? What time do they need to be up? How does that impact your routine as well? Because everybody's going to be changing. And you want to think of it from all angles of every person who's involved, how their patterns are going to be impacted. And how can we juggle and adjust to have as minimal negative impact as possible, shifting the mindset around, okay, things are going to be different because the situation is different. And how can I start to adjust my own situation as well so that I can, continue doing things that I want to do or need to do. The sleep patterns. I love the reboot healthy eating habits. That assumes that you have healthy eating habits, which I hope you do. If not, maybe the fresh start is a good opportunity for everyone to really think about how we pack enough food, not just for our kids, but for ourselves to get through our busy days. What do those breaks and those opportunities to eat for your children look like? I don't know what it's like in Pennsylvania, but I tell you, in a lot of places, the schedule is just not conducive to how a human wants to be fueled. So if we're not going to have an opportunity to really eat that much, then we better front load. We better have a nice, hearty, healthy, full breakfast full of protein, fat, and fiber to keep their brains nourished. Hopefully we can get a snack in at some point. Hopefully we have a nice high quality lunch, maybe a snack if they have after school activities, right? Again, depending on what your child is or isn't doing, that's all going to be kind of part of the detailed plan that you're going to want to lay out. Start stocking the supplies. So let's figure out what we need. Don't wait till the last minute because places don't have things last minute. So think about what that list looks like. The consistent routine. I know a lot of people want to squeeze every ounce of summer out of summer, and I get that. I have people who are, on their summer vacation, they get back on Saturday and school starts Monday. And I'm like, really? You know how hard it is when you've come back from vacation just in general, and then now you're going to like start this whole new routine 2 days later. So maybe we decide, well, we're going to take that few days before school to just be chill, to be home, to get ready, to set ourselves all up physically, mentally, emotionally for going back. And let's not look at it as a negative. Let's maybe be excited about it. We can be honest, it's going to be transition. We may or may not be looking forward to the new schedule that's coming ahead, but it is what it is. So to be negative about it isn't going to change it. It's only going to have an impact probably on our attitude and the outcome and the energy and then all the other things that follow that negativity. So be excited, be motivated, be supportive, and honor your feelings as well. I know there are some people who maybe this is the first year that their child is in school, right? You've been at home maybe with your child, or they've been in part-time school or whatever, and now they're different. So there might be some feelings for you as well about what's going on. And I think it's important to honor and recognize those feelings, and then recognize that this is life. This is what we do. We start, graduating to different levels and phases, and that is going to have an impact, but it's certainly a normal piece of it. Identify any concerns that you have in particular. And if you are co-parenting, let's have conversations with the other person involved, or maybe there are grandparents, or maybe there's an older sibling, or maybe there's a nanny, right? Let's have whoever is involved in the school situation be part of the conversation. Because I think the more we can just have these with each other and everybody kind of gets their thoughts out of their heads, their concerns, right? Let's work as a team to make this as healthy and positive of a experience as possible. So, are there concerns on here that anybody is worried about or concerned about? And then decide, what can you do about it? I mean, when I look at the length of the school day, is that something that you can change or control? I guess is no. Just like how many days a week can you change or control that? No. Can you change or control the amount of remote school if that's happening? Probably not. Can you change or control your work schedule? Maybe. I don't know. Is worrying about socialization going to change their impact of socialization? Probably not. And then what can you do to keep your child physically safe at school? Well, what can you do about it? So when I look at the worries or concerns, so many of them are literally things that you have zero control over. And so, not that I want to pretend it's not a concern, but hopefully you learn to shift your mindset. I can only do what I can do. The school day is the school day. We do the best we can, right? Maybe I can adjust my work schedule. Maybe if I am worried about their socialization because of things we've experienced in the past, we can be proactive about that. So this is the time to really get out of your head what you are worried about, and then determine, okay, what can I do about these things? And if there is something I can do, well, let's figure out what to do. And if there is nothing I can do, let me as the adult learn how to redirect my focus away from things that I can't control. Of course, we're also going to want to identify if your child is concerned. What kinds of things might they have on their mind, and what kinds of new situations might they be facing, or things that they are afraid or worried about, maybe because they've had a past experience, or maybe because they've heard about these things. So have conversations, age appropriate conversations with your kids. And hopefully we are in a place where we can open the door and really make some real connections, so we can learn and let them express and let them feel comfortable expressing things. And knowing that maybe there are no concerns, they're super excited. And then a couple weeks into school, you notice some things have changed. There's a good chance that maybe something has changed. So the more of a connection, the more tuned in, the more open, the kids, and you feel to that conversation, I think the easier it's going to be, as we tend to get busy as the year goes on, and we're in the system, in the schedule, and now there's homework and we got our own stuff, and now nobody's really talking because the walls are kind of all built and we're all in our silos doing our things. So if we can figure out some things on the front end, again, hopefully we can start to have some of these conversations. If it is just beyond the back to school jitters, right? And I mean, some people are super excited about it. I know me growing up, I grew up in Wisconsin, and in a small town, but on the outside, like 5 miles out of the small town. So going back to school was so exciting because I got to see friends, because nobody drove 5 miles out of town to hang out with me. Trust me. Not when, Sarah lives 2 blocks away. They're not driving to Michelle. So, it's not all bad, right? Let's navigate the return. Maybe they're super excited to see their friends and it's all about the friends, and they don't focus on school. They don't focus on the schoolwork, right? They're too busy having fun, seeing all their friends. So it can also be very positive things that could start to impact some other things. But again, the more conversation we can have, what is the root of maybe the nervousness or the hesitation or the fear or whatever it is? Getting kids to actually express their emotions and learn how to label an emotion. I don't think it's ever too young or too old to start really being able to articulate what someone is feeling. Because once we can articulate what the feeling and the emotion is, we can work through it, right? We don't want to ever dismiss it. A feeling is a real feeling. And then we can talk about it, and we can decide together, how do we approach this? What can we do about it? Does your child have coping skills, right? And what are they? What are the coping skills, the traits of resiliency that your child already possesses? What are some that maybe we want to put on the radar to start building and introducing and talking about? Are there some personality traits that you already see in your child, or that that can be a positive, but also could end up maybe being a negative? I think about like the people pleasers, right? And I talk to a lot of adult people pleasers, and like I was that ever since a child. And when you're a child, just get along, right? Just be nice. Everybody get along, be nice. Like that's what we're taught. And a lot of times that ends up developing into people pleasing that eventually comes to be harmful. So it's finding the balance of all of these things. And, again, depending on the age and the grade and the type of school setting, like all of this can be difficult. I'm sure you can remember to when you were a kid. Oh gosh, 6th grade was horrible. Oh, it's awful. It's like one of the worst experiences ever, 6th grade. Yeah, for me it was. 10th grade was not awesome either. So, and everybody's different. I have a best friend. She thought 10th grade was the glory years. So it's going to be a unique situation, but I think the more conversation we have, and the structure that we put in place, because structure and routine are super important. And this is where the parenting gets really hard, right? To establish the boundaries, to establish the expectation, to stay on top of the progress. And if we're co-parenting, or maybe we have, people living in different households, obviously the better the relationship and the communication between those 2 adults, so we're all on the same page, we're all giving the same message, the easier. I know that is not the case for a lot of people. And yet you can only do the best you can in the real life that you live. So you figure out, okay, how am I going to navigate that difficult situation? Depending on the age of the kids and what's going on with that, maybe it's part of the conversation, maybe it's not. It just really depends on that unique situation, which is probably a really good use of your EAP to help one of the counselors maybe help you navigate some of that stuff. Think about what their interests might be. If there are extracurriculars, and if they've already been involved and they want to stay involved, great. What does that look like with the demand of the schoolwork that is also maybe going to be required depending on their age? Are we overbooking our kids? Are we, kind of forcing them to do things because we think they should, or because we did it and we want our kids to do it? Are we deciding that they don't need to do anything? It's fine. Probably there's somewhere in the middle that's a really good balance. So think about what that might look like, how to expose them to unique things and find those commitments that they enjoy, find the ones that are challenging, and see how we can work it all out to the best of our abilities, obviously. As you are maybe even transitioning to going back, or we're in the midst of getting back into the routine, right? That connection and being aware of signs. So I'm going to go into some things we talked about if you've been on other sessions, things that we've talked about before, just about human behavior, right? And every human, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, social, background, culture, every human is a human, and every human being is designed for survival. That's it. So I'm Michelle. Michelle's human is designed to make sure Michelle survives. My human doesn't care if I'm happy, if I have joy, if I feel purpose or value or satisfaction, doesn't care if I'm thriving. Its sole purpose is to make sure Michelle survives. So what does that look like? And what can that look like in a kid? Well, number one, if you're going to survive anything, you have to even be able to detect that there is something to survive from. So you have to be on high alert for danger. And it's best that if you think you detect danger, you assume it is danger. So you react and you fight, flee, or defend yourself from it. And kids are no different, right? So their fears and concerns are probably very different from ours, because I'm not 6 or 12 or 17 anymore. And I think about what my fears and concerns were back then. And now that I'm 50, I'm like, oh, that was so silly. It's not silly when you're 6 or 12 or 17. It's real. It's real to them. So think about how it gets expressed, right? We have that internal thing, and then there's going to be a physical, mental, or emotional expression of it, of fear, of uncertainty, of doubt, of confusion, of whatever. And so how can that look? Well, it can show up in lots of different ways, which is why it's super important to be tuned in to your humans that you are in charge of. And how is that looking, right? So I'll give you an example of something that happened when I was growing up. I was a gymnast growing up, and that took up a lot of time, and I loved it. I was also a pretty good student, not as good as my super smarty pants valedictorian sister, but I was on a roll. I was, I don't know, 5th or 6th in my class. So, did fine. And there was a time in, I want to say it was 8th grade, I really struggled with math. Like, math was not my thing. And yet I didn't feel comfortable speaking up that I didn't get it. I didn't get X. Like, it just made no sense. So I didn't feel comfortable speaking up because I was not Michelle. I was Nicole's sister. My sister's older. So I was Nicole's sister. And of course, Nicole's sister is just like Nicole. She's probably as smart as Nicole. She knows just as much as Nicole. She's as good as Nicole is and all the other things, except she's not. But I was afraid to say that because then I would be judged. And I was afraid to tell my parents because they would probably just think I'm not trying hard enough. So I faked it, except you can't fake a test, and you bring home the first F ever in the Zellner family. That was me. And immediately it was, well, we need to pull you out of gymnastics because clearly you can't take time to do that and do well in school at the same time. Well, that threat was enough to make me expose myself. Like, no, I just don't get it. I'm trying. I really am. I'm working hard. I have anxiety about going to math every day. I have anxiety about this class, anxiety about the test, anxiety about the homework. I don't sleep because I don't get it. Okay. Now, I don't blame my parents, right? They see a correlation. Got an F, time taken out. We need to put. So what I'm saying is there is a reason things are happening, right? Things don't happen for no reason. We often look at the outcome and we base that outcome behavior and we want to fix it or correct it or scold it or shame it or whatever, which is normal. But maybe we need to figure out, why is that outcome happening in the first place? There's always a reason. So let's explore that, right? Why are we clingy? Why have we become easily startled? Why are we maybe not developing in the next growth stage? There could be a lot of things going on, and it can be very difficult to figure out exactly what's going on, but a lot of times it's relatively easy, at least, to find a starting point. And then we go down the road and we figure it out. So this is where the conversations, of course, are also super important. And I think we're getting much better. And I know, if I have some Gen Zs and millennials on, kudos to you, because you are the generations that have gotten us really talking about mental health, and obviously identifying it in kids as well, and being more open to the conversations about it. So I think the conversation around feelings, and honestly, I don't label feelings as good feelings, bad feelings, positive, negative. These are human feelings. There's nothing bad about any of them. They're just normal human feelings and emotions. Let's explore where they're coming from, right? Let's let the child talk in their own words. Let's not fill in the blanks for them. Let's see if they can express in their own words what that is, right? The feelings and behaviors are different as well, right? I can feel anger, but for me to hit my sister is not okay. So why did I hit my sister? Because I was angry that she called me a name. Okay, well, you can be angry at that, but the behavior associated is not okay. So we want to differentiate between those two, and it's okay to have your feelings. It's not always okay to act on them. There probably isn't anything that needs to be fixed, honestly. And I think that's what we often want to jump to, right? We want to fix the problem. Maybe there is no problem. Maybe there's just a disconnect, or maybe there's something that we are just now discovering that, oh, if we modified this, we can have a better outcome. But it's not about fixing anything. It's just getting to the root of an issue and finding a solution to either make it no longer an issue, or to modify so that the issue is not something that's negatively affecting you or the child or anyone else. Their experience is their experience, right? So we don't want to ever dismiss or diminish. And I know, because I've had these conversations with many people, that if your child is just like you, and or your child is nothing like you, either your child is just like you, and so you assume or you think that how you are is the way they're going to be, or they're nothing like you, except you're not, but they must be because they're your child. So I don't understand why they do that. I would never do that. Nobody is like nobody. Nobody is like anybody else. Yes, there are elements of you, obviously, in your children, and the environment, right? The nurture that you give them, that's going to shape and impact them. But every human is uniquely designed. Your children are uniquely designed, and they all have their perceptions, their experiences, right? What they are observing, what their influences are that you might not have any idea about, the stories that they create in their heads about certain things. I remember someone telling me this story, and I think that illustrates it really beautifully. There was a very small town, and they had a really horrific auto accident. It was a semi that crossed the median and took out this family. And this family was well known, well connected, really awesome family in lots of ways. And this one particular child who was friends with some of the kids that were deceased in the accident seemed to be okay, but every time a semi passed them, he would get really, really nervous and anxious and agitated. But nobody made the connection that it was the semi, right? They only made the connection of, oh, his friend died and he's scared. Well, it was really that it's this big uncontrollable force coming his way that he thinks is going to hurt him and his family. So it's perceived in such a different way because of his little mind. And that little mind has not yet had all the experiences of maybe your 36-year-old mind. And so we create different stories based on what we've been exposed to at the time. So once they figured that out, there were so many other things they could do to help him process through and help him get through that fear of this big uncontrollable force coming his way. So I think that is just to remember that our perception is our perception, but your child's perception is going to be very different because they see the world differently. They haven't had all the same experiences yet because they just haven't been around that long. And life is different, right? 6th grade today is very different than 6th grade in, I don't know, whatever year that would have been, 1983, right? Obviously, social media, technology, all these things play a huge role. Play is essential, and we can learn a lot by watching children play, by observing them play, by listening to what they're doing and saying. So be an observer in all of that. And of course, developmentally appropriate. And I like that it's not labeled age appropriate, because kids develop at different ages and girls develop at different ages than boys do, and at different rates, and every human develops at a different rate. So you should hopefully be tuned in to identify the development of your child, regardless of what their age is. And if it seems like it's delayed or it seems like it's accelerated, then we can adjust accordingly, knowing that usually at some point it evens out. There does come a time when generally, if you're delayed, you catch up. If you've accelerated, the others catch up. Maybe you have a super unique situation on either end, then that's your unique situation. All right. We all know that sometimes really yucky things happen, whether it's at school, around schools, or it's related to somebody in the school or whatever, or just in the world in general. So again, the developmental stage and maturity of your child is going to play a huge role in how you go through conversations regarding these things. Number one, check yourself. So if something has happened, whatever it is, make sure you are tuned into your own emotions about the situation and your own knowledge about the situation. Get yourself to a calm, peaceful place. Not that, you're over it or whatever, but that you are in a place where you are not going to start to transfer some of this energy that could be difficult for your child to witness. And now the child is getting nervous and anxious about it. That you are energetically in a good place to have a conversation or to do whatever is necessary based on what the particular situation is calling for. I think the facts and the context, of course, is important as well. And this is probably a time to have like extra eyes and be extra tuned in, because, sometimes it can be delayed, right? Often the first thing, especially in the face of really yucky stuff, is to kind of freeze, because you don't know what to do, so you do nothing. Well, your child doesn't know what to do, so they might do nothing, or they might be trying to sort it all out in here. And so it appears that they're just fine. And then maybe a week or a month or 3 months later, you're seeing something different and you're not putting it back to 3 months ago. So recognize that there can be some delayed response and reaction to certain things, which is why just that constant connection and conversation is always going to be super helpful. Obviously, we want to focus on the good things as well. Helping kids through some of these things is usually going to be involving them being part of the process, right? Our kids are exposed to so much than we think they are. You don't know what they're going to hear from a child at school. You don't know what they're going to overhear, maybe adults talking about. You don't know what they're absorbing when they're, passing by something. And so recognize that they're absorbing a lot more than you think they are. I have another story. One of my dear friends lives in Florida, and they had a horrific situation with a girl who was on the cheerleading team, and both her daughters were on the cheer team. And then she has a younger son. And the younger son, he's always, on his iPad with his earphones in the back seat. And my friend was talking on speakerphone with one of the cheer moms about this. Well, what my friend didn't realize was her younger son wants to know what's going on. He didn't have his headphones turned on. He's not listening to stuff on the iPad. He's listening to her because he wants to know what's going on, because he always feels like he's left out, because it's always about, Grace and Angie, who are, the cheer daughters. And, I'm just 7 and I'll stick in the back seat and watch your iPad. Not really, but that's how he felt. So he often would just listen to conversations, and he heard what happened and heard all of this. And she didn't know any of that. And months and months go by where now he's afraid to go to school. Now he's, afraid to leave the house. Now, all of a sudden, she's like, all of a sudden he started having all this major anxiety. Well, it wasn't until they really explored it and he said, well, I know what happened. And she had no idea. So, yeah, it's tough. Right. Thank you. Exactly. My daughter learned there was no Santa and Tooth Fairy in kindergarten when she lost a tooth and said, I know it's you, and Dad, give him the money. Can I have it now? It's super sad. Yeah. And those are things you can't control. Right. So yeah, as a parent, you get to decide what that means. And maybe we're like, you know what? I don't know who you heard that from, but in our house, the Tooth Fairy comes. Those are those things in the moment that you're like, okay, what do I do with this? And there's no right answer, right? There's no blueprint for it. You do the best you can in the real life that you live, based on your kids and you and what you want to do going forward. But that's a great example. I'm sure you're not the only one that's gone through that. Some questions to establish connection. And gosh, this is just good for anybody, not just with your child, but I think for anybody, open-ended questions, not questions that involve a yes or no answer, because they're going to give you a yes or no answer. Also recognize, because I know this was me. My dad would often pick me up from gymnastics at 7 p.m. I was at school all day. I had 3.5 hours of practice. And he would be like, what are you thinking about, honey? And we had a 30-minute drive home. What do you think about? Truly, I was thinking about nothing. 100%. There was nothing in my brain. But he didn't believe, he thought I just didn't want to talk to him or just didn't want to tell him. There was truly nothing in my brain because I was physically and mentally done, exhausted. So, sometimes that actually is the case. So we can ask, we should still ask because we want to express interest, but maybe we don't always push, right? But the open-ended questions, what was the best part of your day? What are some things that, are exciting to you? Was there anything that was hard today? Or how did that, that situation we talked about, is anything changing with that? Anything that you can think about that's going on that is an open-ended conversation kind of question that hopefully they'll open up, and give them the time and space to open up. Sometimes and this happens with adults too, right? We don't maybe know how to say it in the right way, so we choose to not say it. We choose to just say, oh, it's fine. When it's probably not fine, I just don't really know how to describe it or know what to say about it, or I don't really want to go into it right now. So it is being connected, but it's also allowing for your child to take it at their own pace. And if we are seeing some of the signs, like I explained earlier, then we're going to probably want to explore and open up the conversation from different angles. So these are some things. I don't know if anybody has something that they ask their kid or that they do that is very helpful. If you want to share that in the chat, feel free. But I would screenshot this one if you would, because I think when we're busy in our own heads about our day and the stuff we have to do, and then you're like, oh, that's right, there's this kid sitting here, I should probably check in with him. And then we start to maybe, I don't know, cut off their sentence, or we get impatient with their answer, and so we get distracted and go on to something else. Excellent. Somebody's already screenshot. Wonderful. I think it's a great list of questions. So, and like I said, not just for kids, but for anybody to connect. Talking to them about their mental health. Again, listening and validating the experience. So in order to listen, that means you have to be quiet, which is really hard to do. And really hard for us as parents to do also, is to be quiet, because sometimes it can be hard to get them to get out what they want to get out, or they don't stop talking. And it's like, okay. But again, just understanding and elaborating and educating that these are normal human experiences, and normal, you're not the only one, promise you. And this is, just part of a life situation that lots of people will face and go through, and you're just getting to have an experience that we're going to work on and get them to maybe learn about feelings and emotions and why, right? Okay, you're scared, but why? What specifically is making you scared? What about it is scary? Again, their answer, you might be completely shocked, because it might not be anything close to what you thought it was. Let them ask questions, right? Let them feel comfortable enough to opening up and asking questions and having frequent and open conversations about these things. And there is nothing wrong with them. There really isn't. I mean, they're just normal humans trying to do the best they can being human. That's what it is. Thank you. I want to share this one. This is good. I try to talk to get their attention, engage the discussion. My son is skipping school, wanted to talk, and he said he didn't. He actually jumped out of the truck. We were driving through a neighborhood, thank goodness, because I was only going 10 to 15 miles an hour. Goodness. He did a 007 rolling, running out, and I was just stupefied. My older daughter was in the car. She just looked at me and said, he said he didn't want to talk. Yeah. And you're right. Like, when someone is quiet and just let it be, we want answers, right? And I hope he's okay, number one. But yeah, right. We have to remember, it's not all about us. We can't force anyone to share if they don't want to share. So thank you for sharing that, because I can only imagine how gut-wrenching that is as a parent to do that and to go through that. And then to have your teenage daughter be like, say they don't want to talk. Pretty simple, right? So yeah, it can be difficult. And figuring out, like, when is the appropriate time for a conversation too, right? Sometimes like, we want that answer in the moment, but I need to probably hold back, because clearly this is not the right setting or situation for maybe a conversation that feels safe and open, where we're actually focused in on the conversation. So us as adults being able to hold back and pause, and then, have a conversation at a different time can be really difficult too, but maybe something also that might be helpful. This is a great question. How do we know, or how can we know if my kid is lying, and how can we overcome and make or try them not to lie? Oh, goodness. I think it depends specifically, number one, the age of the kid. Number two, what do you think they are lying about? Number three, are we leading by example? And have we already had conversations about honesty and being truthful and, those kinds of things. So I think that's a great specific question. If I could have a few more specific details, I might be able to get you a better answer. Otherwise, this is a really great scenario and situation for your EAP counselor to help you navigate through. Because it depends. Are you lying about, doing drugs, or are you lying about, your best friends with Johnny? I don't know, right? It kind of matters. Let's see. Yeah, great point. Yeah, really realizing that talking in the car about something yucky and hard is not the place, because it felt like kind of boxing them into a corner. Yeah. Now we can still have different conversations in the car, right? But hard conversations, time and place, right? And those are just things that we learn. Oh gosh, what is the appropriate age to give children cell phones? I mean, again, development matters. The maturity of your child matters. I mean, I have friends who their kids are not getting cell phones until they're 15 or 16. And then it is very limited. There are all the parent, protocols are on there and they are limiting it. And the cell phones, you're home from school, you don't need to talk to chat to anybody. It goes away until your homework's done. Then you get your phone for 1 hour and then it comes back. So I think it just really depends on the situation. Obviously, sometimes it's easier to have a point of contact and connectivity if you have different people who have to connect and communicate, maybe different parents, maybe there's, activities, school activities. So yeah, having a way to connect and communicate, really helpful. But then again, we have the boundaries, right? We write the rules. I'm going to give you this device, but it's a privilege to have this device. And there are rules around this device use. And you as the adult makes the rules. And you as the adult has to enforce the rules. And they can throw all the tantrums they want. And I get it. I've threw tantrums many times as a kid for things I wanted and didn't get. You decide, right? What does that look like? Yeah, excellent. This person suggested it depends on need. Are they busy? Are they in sports, right? Playing football, sometimes difficult to get hold of it. I wish that at a time he did have a cell phone, right? Exactly. So yeah, I think it really depends on the emotional and maturity development. What are they going to use the cell phone for, right? What are they using it for? Obviously, we know that social media, I mean, there is plenty of evidence that social media does not help anybody's physical, mental, or emotional development. There's also, one of my friends has a local radio talk show. She had this person on, and I wish I remembered who it was, but she is doing research. It's not just the emotional and mental health that is challenged. The constant device in front of their face is literally changing the wiring of their brains. And we know, social interactions are not happening because they don't know how to form a complete sentence, because they text in emoji and sound bites and all of these things. And while that is okay for a fully developed brain, these brains are still developing, and it is altering the way they develop. And maybe for some of it, it's going to be good, but I don't know. I mean, only time will tell, right? All right, let's see. So back to the lying. He's a toddler. He lies when I ask him again and again. He tells the truth. Like, why did you not eat lunch? Were you watching the iPad when I'm not around? Simple stuff. So I would, do you ever ask him, why did you not feel comfortable telling me the truth the first time I asked? So, again, the toddler, maybe he's super developed. And he can articulate that. Maybe he's afraid of letting you down, or he's afraid of getting in trouble, or right, the fear of that, right? Usually we lie to protect ourselves. Anybody, that's why you lie, either to protect yourself or to make yourself look better than you otherwise would look. So maybe we want to explore and getting to the root around that, to see why, right? Maybe why did you not eat lunch, right? I don't know. Maybe my stomach hurts. Maybe I don't like this food, but I don't want to tell you because I'll get scolded. I don't know. So I think maybe getting to the exploration stage of why we might be lying. Let's see, how do we present to a school that allowing snack time for a child is important when they must go 4 hours without eating otherwise? Ugh, it's so awful. I guess we got to go to the school board, right? I mean, or to that principal, or to the nurse, right? The school nurse, the gym teacher, people who hopefully know a little bit about health and well-being. Or you get somebody like me in to talk to the school and say, look, kids need to eat. And adults need to eat too. Everybody should be eating, because I promise you, I work with a ton of teachers. They're not eating either because they don't have time. Everybody needs to eat. So yeah, I think a parent group, a united front, if there are some members of the staff that are already like on board, like, yeah, that would be a good idea. Let's get them on board. I mean, that sounds like it's going to be a very grassroots, like, okay, we got to do this and present it as a united front to see. And then maybe you have a plan of how that snack time works and how it looks. And yes, it's okay for everybody to eat a snack at this period of time. If you want one, great. If you don't, fine. So yeah, I don't know, that would be interesting. I would love to stay in touch with you and figure out how you do that. Let's see. Yes, feel too much social media is overwhelming. I have 7 kids. Wow, good for you. Raised one in the 80s and 90s and 2000. It's a terrible decade, overstimulation. Yeah, there's so many memes going out right now about like us kids of the 80s, and oh, I feel so sorry for those of you who never got to experience the 80s and 90s. I do. I mean, those were the best years in my opinion. So grateful they didn't have social media back then. Let's see, if they respond with I don't know, do we just keep asking each time until they are comfortable or can articulate the reason? I don't know if you keep asking. I think maybe you ask, like, is there a certain feeling that that's coming to mind? Or, maybe we follow up later, like, I asked before and you said you didn't know. I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts about that, if anything came to mind. So maybe we ask, but we do it in a different way at a different time. Or maybe you say, I remember, like, or there are times when someone asks me a question, I really don't know either. And yeah, it's kind of weird. It's uncomfortable. I get it, but it's okay. It's normal sometimes to not really know. So you can validate their experience that they don't know. Or maybe depending on the situation, you can say, oh, I had kind of a similar situation and, this is how I felt, or this is how I think it might make me feel if that was happening to me. So maybe we can throw some ideas out there to see if they feel comfortable opening up like that. Let's see. I have a 3-year-old. He always hits me or my 6-year-old when he gets excited. We spoke to him with soft tone, told him it's not good habits. Making a 3-year-old understand. So if it's a consistent behavior, and again, the developmental stage of your child, I mean, I am no child expert, okay, but just based on what I know of people with kids and my own experiences with kids and humans, I mean, there might be a disconnect between that behavior for your 3-year-old, right? And their feelings of excitement. So, I mean, I think you might want to explore this with a child therapist, quite honestly, because there could be some developmental situations going on. Not anything bad, just, that could be a sign of something like that. So maybe exploring that, there could be some neurological things going on or something like that. I don't know. But it clearly, if you have explained it and forgets, right, then there's something else. There is a disconnect somewhere. I have a 14-year-old daughter, but haven't gotten her a phone yet. But when her older siblings were at the same age, they had phones. This is because I see that she's not at the stage where I can trust her with the phone. Watching her will decide when I think it's time. Yeah. As children grow up differently, I think you should treat them as such. Absolutely. And that's why it can be hard, right? Especially when we have maybe already had certain ones, and then we just expect they're all just going to follow suit, and recognize every child is different no matter what. And they might have some similarities too, right? And that is the challenge of parenting for sure, is to identify all of these things. All right, you guys are awesome. Excellent questions. Let's see here. Any information that can be provided to the school to explain the importance of eating a snack? I would love for you to reach out to me. I can give you lots of that. I don't have any like right off the hand to give you. PFF is your BFF. If you've never been to any of my classes before, you probably never heard that, but protein, fat, fiber, a human needs to eat. The only way we can function is by putting fuel in our bodies. So I'd love to do a nutrition class for your school if that's what we need to do. But yeah, please reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you about that. Best practices to increase resilience, right? I mean, we are resilient by nature, but we have to treat our humans in ways that will stop causing harm and that will actually help us be healthy, happy, thriving humans. And modern life is hard. Like, here you go, right? Eating, here you go. Tell them you went to this training, and guess what? A best practice is to eat. because it is. Just like movement, just like breathing, just like getting rest, repair, and recovery time. Like these, when I look at these words, this is just all how you nurture and nourish a human. Technology, yes, to some degree, but the overuse of it, no, right? Like everything is good, but too much of it is not necessarily good. So are you, as an adult, practicing these things? If not, that's a good place to start, right? Let's have the family be involved in the family experience and lead by example. And that we work on it with our, as a family. I teach my own class called Family Practice, and it's basically how can we operate together as a team? And one of the things that I find very helpful is to have a family mission statement. I'm sure Penn State Health has a mission statement, right? Well, you are the boss of your family. You're the boss of your organization. Your family is your organization. What is the mission statement of your organization? Let's get everybody involved in creating the mission statement. Your 3-year-old, what's important to them? What are their values? What do they think is, a way that they should be represented? Your 17-year-old, your 26-year-old, if they're still in the house, right? You doesn't mean that we're going to all do all of it, but we want to be a contributing member to the organization. Everybody wants to feel that, from the 3-year-old to the 38-year-old. And so everybody should have a say. And then we come together to see how can we all work together to support these things without, putting, oh, the kids can do whatever they want, or, oh, it's a dictator and everything is just everything mom and dad say. There's got to be some blend and harmony, obviously. And then at the end of the day, you're the boss, so you get to make the decisions. And that's, for the most part, how it goes, right? And they can be hard decisions for sure, because I know we're going to be faced with, it's not fair, and I don't like you, and you're horrible, and why this? And trust me, I said all those things to my parents too. My guess is some of you might have said those things to your parents. But you do the best you can with what you have going on. What else? Yes. Angela, would you mind just typing my information up in the chat so that people can reach out to me? All right. So the holistic approach, again, think about this as a human being, right? Maybe your child is Stacy. Well, there's a human being who is operating Stacy. And let's get to learn the human, and let's get to learn Stacy, and let's get to have them learn to be integrated with each other. We should be doing that for ourselves as well. So the intention, right? How we're devoting our time, our money, our energy, where we're putting the focus, right? What are we focusing on? And does it really matter that much? Or are we putting a lot of focus on things that in the end aren't that big of a deal? The old cliche, pick your battles, right? What matters at this moment, and how much is this going to matter later? You have to let your child experience pain. I know nobody wants their kids to be in pain. And yet that is the only way they can learn how to be humans in the real world. So if we are always scooping in to prevent them from having discomfort or from failing or whatever, they are not going to be able to have those coping skills later on, because real life is hard. So as difficult as that is a highest form of love for, I think, a parent to a child. I know it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but it is how they're going to learn how to grow wings and someday hopefully fly, because that actually is your job as a parent, to help mold and shape a healthy, happy, thriving, productive member of society. Let your child be bored. And being bored is not zoning out on their iPad. If you are truly bored, then sit around and be bored. That won't last long, I promise. Let's find ways to maybe entertain, or maybe you see that they, are bored. It's really because they're not challenged. It's because there's nothing interesting. There's nothing that's difficult for them. There's nothing. So let's explore that. What are we doing for creativity? What are we doing for physical outlets? What are we doing to challenge ourselves mentally? Structure and consistency. I mean, it is so critical. And if we're just like haphazard, winging it, and we live our lives that way, it is chaos for a lot of people. I see it. It's what I coach on a lot, how to build structure and consistency. Encourage connections, real ones, not ones just through technology. And I know that can be hard, but those are the real human things that we need to have, our human interactions. Model good self-care. So again, that family mission statement, we put high quality nourishing foods in our bodies, we move our bodies, we have healthy conversations, we express our feelings and our thoughts, we allow others to have their feelings and thoughts. We shut it down and we get rest and repair time. We do things together as a family. And then absolutely some version of counseling or mental health support, or just having someone to talk to, depending on the age of your child. Maybe there's a mentorship available, or a mentor that is, somebody who'd be a really good influence on your child that's at a different stage in life. I think sports are great for a lot of that as well. So, what opportunities are there to have connection to someone who's not your parent? I didn't know this was going to be part of my role, but years ago when I was a personal trainer, I had some teenagers that were my clients, and I was 10 years older than them. So, older, but not that much, but well older, younger than their parents. And they had trust in me to confide in me some stuff and I told them right off the bat, you can tell me anything and I'm not going to go run to your parents. However, if there is something that I really feel is a safety issue, I will. I still want you to tell me those things. And more often than not, they did tell me those things. And a couple of times it was, you know what, I'm going to reach out. Let's have a conversation with your mom about this. So that person who's an unbiased third party, that's not you, right? Don't take it personally that your kids don't want to talk to you. It's just a thing, right? And if you have that relationship where they share everything, that's good too, but maybe should they be sharing everything, right? Is that friendship now preventing you from being a parent? It's such a fuzzy line. It can be difficult, and every child is different. So we have to navigate that. These interactive tools are super helpful. And of course, your EAP support. So if you haven't already explored what's available, please take time to do that. It is also for your kids. So, it's not just for you, but your eligible family members, and your kids are eligible family members. Lots of different work-life benefits as well, and super easy to access. So I know we're almost up against the clock, but if there are any questions that I haven't gotten to, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle. A lot of great information as we start up the new school year. I did put Michelle's contact information in the chat box, michelle@betterbeans.net. Just a reminder, the recording along with a copy of the PowerPoint slides will be sent out in an email. I know some of you are taking screenshots, so no worries if you didn't get all the shots. We will be sending this out in an email as well. So I don't see any final questions come in, just some people saying thank you so much. Great presentation. And so with that, again, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And we will see you next month. Stay tuned for some information forthcoming about our next Lunch and Learn. So have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.